welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Vampires. I have to say, Neonate, that of late your questions pertaining to the vampire clans have been scraping the bottom of the barrel. Talk of Clan Salubri may be relevant because of their historical importance. Talk of Clan Barley may be important, bearing in mind, however, that they no longer exist, and they are just an historical parable. But now I receive these little messages asking for information on the Samadi, the True Bruja, the Nagaraja, and the Daughters of Cacophony. These bloodlines that may or may not, emphasis on the may not, exist at all, or have ever existed. The kinds of things that harpies gossip about in Elysium, that some strange vampire passed through the city exhibiting some bizarre discipline and was never seen again. And so the harpies spread the rumour, and so the rumour becomes fact somehow, and the prince then announces, "I will not allow a vampire exhibiting these powers in my city." That vampire never existed. Those powers probably never existed, or if they did, it was probably some obscure thaumaturgy, or maybe some necromantic ritual. Whatever the case, I will humour you and talk with you about the Daughters of Cacophony, a myth. The problem with bloodlines, such as the Sirens, as they are often known, is that they have no known progenitor, quite a lot of them at any rate, and so tracing them back to a main clan is very, very difficult, if not impossible. The Daughters of Cacophony are stricken with this flaw. They cannot be traced back to any clan, they do not have any historical relevance, they have never appeared in the first city, they are not connected to any antediluvian. Rather, the first mention of them in the texts of the vampiric scholar Bindusara, I think, allows them to pop up in the 18th or 19th century for the first time, and errantly thereafter. Now, this is a myth. Bear that in mind. A toreador was once walking through the woods at night, as a vampire does, admiring all of the beautiful things that a toreador would. The trees, the stars twinkling above, the moon shining down, almost as bright as the sun, but infinitely more comforting. And the toreador, so transfixed with the beauty, walked deeper and deeper into the woods. Let's call it the New Forest. It could be set anywhere. Hell, let's set it in the Black Forest, because the location doesn't matter. This toreador could hear something of the silence of the forest, not at all afraid of any lupines that may be around. The toreador went deeper and deeper into the darkness. She could hear a voice singing a most beautiful song, the most beautiful song you have ever heard, in the most lilting, wonderful voice. Penetrated her very core, reached her soul, warmed it, made her feel more human, made her feel alive again. This dance that was playing in her mind made her feel alive, and so she had to get closer and closer to this warming sound, not too unlike how our toreador does so with a muse. She found that it emerged from a cairn or a mound or something to that effect. It changes from story to story. And indeed, in some stories, there are two vampires walking through the woods, a toreador and a Malkavian, and they both entered this cairn. What happened next in this myth is that the vampire emerged. Only one vampire, whether one went in and one came out, or two went in and one came out, only one came out. And this vampire's mind was so full of the music that she had heard, that she could only speak in song, that she could only talk in lyric, that occasionally she'd be operatic, occasionally she'd be folky. She had many genres at her disposal, but the point was that this vampire that emerged from this cairn was now a daughter of Cacophony. Yes, you see, as far as origin tales go, this isn't the strongest, and that is because it's a myth. How can two vampires go into a place and come out as one? How can one go into a place, spend many a night there, and come out without having fed? Now, some Toreador, the poetic ones, will say, this was a place inhabited by the Fae, protected by the lupines, and so the vampire was safe in there, and was taught the magic of the changelings, and that magic infected her mind, and so she came out slightly addled, somehow able to communicate through this song over vast distances, able to transfix people with this Fae music, able to shatter bones with her pitch. And all of her childhood thereafter could do the same thing. Not just her childhood, but any other vampires that she led into this forest, and often she did, like a will-o'-wisp, into this cairn, and they emerged with the same gifts. Now, supposedly way back when, the Daughters of Cacophony also included male members. This name that was attached to them at one point was the Sons of Discord, but I think that holds even less weight than the name Daughters of Cacophony. Needless to say, of late, the male members of Daughters of Cacophony have all but disappeared. Supposedly there was a purge within the bloodline. This bloodline that must contain only about 10 vampires, if it contains any, decided we'll wipe out all the male members, including castrati, interestingly enough. I do not know their approach to transgender and transsexual, but any male member of the Daughters of Cacophony no longer exists, which is upsetting because I heard Elvis Presley was a member. You must forgive my somewhat flippant tone when discussing a bloodline such as this, because vampires that are cursed to constantly hear music in their mind, that are unable to concentrate on anything for a terribly long time, just sound to me like a musical bunch of Toreador. And fair enough, they are quite insane, but it isn't unknown for Toreadors to have derangements of their own. Still, again, let us carry on humouring the idea that there are vampires going around in these final nights calling themselves Daughters of Cacophony. They appear in Camarilla cities, they appear in Sabbat cities, and they have done for the past 200 years. Not many. And they consider themselves above, or rather just disinterested in the sects and the jihad, and thus the sects often afford them the same grace. They don't care about these vampires that sing along to themselves. The problem is when Daughters of Cacophony sing to other people. Now, it is said that a Toreador can sway the mind of an entire city. All she has to do is sit on the arm of the chair that the prince happens to be sat in that night, and the prince will change his mind. The Daughter of Cacophony can change the mind of an entire Elysium through her song, and in the best style. The Elysium doesn't know that she's doing it. Melpomene, the Daughters of Cacophony's bloodline discipline, allows them to not just bewitch, bewilder, and, well, bamboozle those who listen, but it is said that Melpomene at high levels can also be used to harm, that these vampires can sing such a song that it can break bones, shatter glass, make skin separate on the muscle, that they can tear through things with their own voice. Now, this may not sound very vampiric, but bear in mind that according to the myth that generated them, they have the abilities of the Fae, and this does tie into some abilities of the Fae. And it isn't unknown for vampires to be able to coax people in, to beckon them to follow their every command. Usually that would be associated with dominate or presence. Melpomene can achieve a very similar effect, although it is less direct than dominate, or indeed presence, which is hardly direct at all. Supposedly the users of Melpomene can communicate over vast distances through song, as long as someone's heard their song before. If that Daughter of Cacophony is singing it again, they will start hearing it in their mind. This would be an amazing way to transmit, I don't know, hidden messages, coded messages, the kinds of things that could severely weaken a city were the Daughters of Cacophony a cohesive force that actually had an objective. And I'm not saying that they do, because I'm not saying that they exist in these final nights, if ever. The ability or discipline is an odd one. I think many write it off as something that does not fit in with, well, with what is known of the kindred. And yet there are certain similarities between it and other disciplines. It just seems more focused. The other disciplines, interestingly enough, that the Daughters of Cacophony hold are presence, which is a natural fit, and fortitude, which seems an odd choice. Odd because if the Toreador founded them, well, presence is a given. Fortitude, not so much. Even the Malkavians, they don't have presence or fortitude. Rather, that matches Ventru disciplines almost entirely, except the Melpomene replaces the Dominate. So, again, it calls into question their roots, their heritage. Most bloodlines share at least 2 disciplines with their founder clan, and it really makes you wonder where these vampires came from in the first place. The more paranoid kindred would have you believe that maybe they have been around since the times of Rome. Maybe the oracles of Greece were, in fact, Daughters of Cacophony. They appear to have certain roots that they can claim back to, and it's all very wishy-washy. It's hardly anything solid, but it does make vampires with a bit of wanderlust think, and spend a bit of time investigating. Wasting time, interestingly, that the Daughters of Cacophony puts good use while that vampire's out of the city trying to research that thing that the daughter whispered into their ear in such a light, beautiful, lilting tone. The siren is moving in and taking that vampire's herd, taking that vampire's followers, his allies, his contacts, his power, his position. And everyone loves the siren. So that when that vampire returns, realising he's been chasing his tail around the world, he has nothing. He isn't wanted. Enough rumours have been spread about him by the Daughters of Cacophony that, in fact, he's an exile now, or maybe even on the red list, ready to be wiped out by the prince, or maybe even a bishop or archbishop. If the Daughters of Cacophony existed, they would be master manipulators, and there would be a reason to fear them for this reason. They can get in deep. They are the proverbial earworm of the final nights, because their messages stay with the people they communicate with. They sing a song, it stays in the head of the vampire, and like a Manchurian candidate, at some point that song will start playing again, and that vampire may well find himself compelled to do something in service to a Daughter of Cacophony he can barely remember, but he remembers the song that the sirens sang. When you put it like that, they are quite frightening. Most Daughters of Cacophony emerge from musical backgrounds. Not all, necessarily, but even the ones that don't quickly develop musical talent. And this means that some daughters are operatic, you know, they are the large Valkyrie women. Some are punks, some are rockers, some are mods. Essentially, any musical background you can think of could spawn one of these Daughters of Cacophony, could spit one of these sirens out if another daughter found that vampire, or if she followed that route herself. The largest mystery surrounding them, of course, what are their true origins? What are their true motives, if indeed they have them? Because they communicate with each other well enough. They come together and sing songs together, which all sounds very hippie, doesn't it? Singing around a campfire in the basement. but they're communicating something in their own strange language, and just because it's beautiful to listen to doesn't mean the words don't carry some weight and danger with them. So what are they about? Probably not worth considering, seeing as they don't exist. And, really, if I wanted to read about musical vampires, I would probably read something by Anne Rice instead. Vampire rock bands are not as common as you might otherwise believe. There are no Daughters of Cacophony, and I will soon enlighten you about the myth of the Samadhi, the Nagaraja, the True Bruja, and any other nonsense bloodline that you happen to throw my way. Thank you very much for watching.